All of our jurors and alternates have returned. Mr. Durst is present with Mr. Chesnoff and Mr. DeGuerin, and Mr. Henderson Bailey and Milius and Lewin are present for the people. So, ladies and gentlemen, the August 6th is losing badly in the polls here. It's a tension between finishing promptly and interfering with your lives, and you are making sacrifices to be here. I understand. That's why I'm engaging you in this dialogue. So, August 6th is definitely out, and Fridays are losing. So, but I'll chat with you some more as we clarify our schedule. You wanted me to repeat, so I'm going to go through next week. So this week, the only day we're late is just an hour late on Thursday, right? Then we're off on Friday. Next week, we're off on Monday. We're full days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Next Friday, we're off. Don't worry about that. We're off. Monday the 9th, we're starting late, 11 o'clock. Next Tuesday, the 10th, we will not be here. The court is dark. On the 11th, we're here all day. On the 12th, we have almost all of the day, but leaving early. One juror, we're accommodating a juror on that day and leaving by 3:30, I think was going to be sufficient for that juror. Let me, as far as what follows, there's still some flexibility in there, so let me get back to you after that. But I recognize that a lot of you have moved your schedules to Fridays because we're in session the rest of the week, and just because we have a free day earlier in the week, that doesn't necessarily help you. So with that in mind, it's a work in progress, and we're going to try to optimize this for all. So with that, let's return to Mr. Milius and the people's case.
Thank you, Your Honor. During the course of their relationship, Jarecki and Durst, sometimes with others present or involved, communicated repeatedly by phone, email, and in person. The parties agreed that all emails and voice recordings of Durst by Jarecki, Smerling, or hit
The picture's not showing?
Nah.
Mr. Milius and I can. Very close resemblance.
Dave, you want to take over?
What?
You want to take over, handle?
Oh, it's all right. I'm proud of my friend.
The parties agreed that all emails and voice recordings of Durst by Jarecki, Smerling, or Hit the Ground Running, which were provided in discovery, are authentic and require no additional foundation pursuant to Evidence Code Section 1400. On December 11th, 2010, Durst, Jarecki, and Smerling recorded the DVD commentary for All Good Things at a recording studio in Culver City. The understanding by Jarecki and Durst was that this recording would be included with the public release of the DVD. Durst's attorney, Steve Rubinowitz, was present for this recording session in which Durst and Jarecki watched All Good Things while Smerling and others filmed their conversation while they watched the film. Multiple cameras recorded Durst's contemporaneous reaction to the movie and Durst's discussion with Jarecki. True and accurate video of portions of this recording session are admitted into evidence as Exhibit 268 and will now be played. On the lower right-hand side of Exhibits 268 is the movie All Good Things. On the upper and lower left are contemporaneous recordings of Jarecki and Durst. Does everyone have a transcript? We're still waiting.
One more, and the script is 268A?
Yes, sorry, Your Honor, yes.
This is the DVD commentary?
This is DVD commentary, or 268. Everyone have a transcript? The BB ready? And let's play. Oh. One technical issue here, we're gonna back it up and.
Okay.
No one told me to plug in the other.
Sorry, Your Honor, we're gonna have to.
Okay. And who are those people in the trees? That's what I want to know.
May I approach the well?
You may.
Figure it's some lawyers.
You wanna try it?
Yeah.
So I think we're going to talk a little bit about the movie and the story that inspired it.
Is that a good audio?
Without Robert Durst, there would be no movie. Well, I'm curious about when you first heard that there was going to be a movie inspired by your life. When was the first time you remember hearing that?
Maybe 3-4 years ago. And my first thought about it was, well, they've done 97 other biographies. This is just another one.
Do you remember did you hear about it through your family? Did you hear about it in the press?
I read it on a Google alert that you were filming it someplace in Connecticut.
Do you remember meeting her family?
Yeah, and that is one of the major regrets in my life, is the way I treated her family, her mother. I mean, they'd never met anything like me before, this guy with piles of money and terrible manners. I used to feed the dog while I was sitting at the table. I used to talk about making love to Kathy at the dining room table in front of her mother. It was absolutely impossible. And I told Kathy that if she had the child, I was going to get a divorce.
Was it true?
Who knows? I think so, yes.
Do you remember the conversation about the abortion, the conversation about you encouraging her to do that or discouraging her from having a child?
Well, we spoke several times in Vermont that I had a miserable childhood and wasn't bringing a child into this world. And she would always talk about, wanting to have children. And it wasn't until I found that it really came up when she told me she was pregnant. And not unlikely, see, I blew up, and if you want to have a child, you're going to have a child, but you're going to be divorced. And I had two best boyfriends, Doug Oliver and Nick Chabon, both in real estate. And Kathy was a smart girl, did real good in high school. Did real good at this little college in Danbury, Connecticut. What was it, Westcon?
Western Connecticut State College.
Yes, Western Connecticut State College. And she got top grades there, made friends there.
Now, eventually, she did apply to medical school. Did you know that she was applying to medical school when she did?
Sure. Encouraged her to do so, but with a big caveat that the people who go to medical school get real good grades, do real good on the MCATs. They mostly come from much better colleges than you went to. You want to do it. She applied to 15 of them and got interviewed and accepted at Albert Einstein. None of the others were interested.
And I know you said in court, you said to my shock, she made a bunch of friends, I guess, when she was there. She met
Gilbert and Ijami, Kathy Tradesman, a couple of others who stayed good friends through the whole time that I knew her. She had trouble making friends at Albert Einstein because everybody was so sophisticated and smart and had grown up in a place like me and had gone to unbelievable universities. When they sent out the list of the people who were accepted and the colleges they'd gone to, you saw the best universities in the world.
Was there a moment when you felt that her effort to kind of get out there and go to medical school and do those things went from being a good activity for her, career for her, and it started to be a distraction from her relationship with you?
Well, I was always very controlling. In terms of the stuff that's out there, that I tried to get her out of medical school, and that I wouldn't pay her tuition. I wouldn't pay her tuition because she'd hired lawyers. My lawyer had insisted that I don't pay for anything I hadn't paid for me in the past, and she had gone and done one of those federal programs where they pay for it and you take a loan. The lawyer said, don't pay for the medical school. And that was when she first disappeared, and I didn't know where she was. I knew that she was doing bad in school and gotten a whole bunch of incompletes, and I was under the impression that she wasn't sure she was going to graduate. This is close. After a number of years, before I would go to her family's house for a function, I would insist that we agree on how long we're going to stay. 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. We would always do a negotiation. When the time was up, I was ready to leave. Seeing the story got the hair two different ways. One way, I drag her out of the house by her hair. The other way, I grab her hair and a big chunk comes out. Either one is close enough.
Did you feel like she was, there's a little bit of a sense in this scene that she was, pushing you a little, pressing your buttons a little bit, that at that point in the relationship, she was starting to kind of get, tougher about, well, I don't need to leave when you want to leave, or I'm going to...
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And she got into the other extreme, where she would make a point of knowing what I wanted and not do what I wanted. We would go to a party or something or other, and she would know that I'd be ready to leave after an hour or two, and she would purposely stay for a much longer time, and I would always say, well, you want to stay, stay, I'm going to leave.
So when do you think she first went to a lawyer in the relationship? Not dates, but...
And this, I know, in the spring of 1980. She didn't tell me she'd go into a lawyer, but I got a certified check. When I got the checks back, there was a certified lawyer for $5,000 paid to that big law firm with the baseball commissioner in it. Signed by Kathy, and I went home, what is this about? She wants a lawyer. I have a right to have a lawyer.
Right. And when you first got that return check, did you feel, surprised, betrayed? Did you feel that suddenly there was more of a rift than you had thought there had been?
I felt like I needed a lawyer, and I got a lawyer.
Had you thought it would just percolate and that nothing really that concrete would happen, and then she made a decision to make it a legal thing?
I think she thought that by getting a lawyer, she could force me to let her do more of the things she wanted. Maybe she thought she'd get me to, have a child with her, but that she wouldn't be just a passive one, and this would give her some control over me. This is more or less accurate. I don't know why she would go in our neighbor's window as opposed to go to their door. But it was pouring and we were having a wrestling, shoving type fight. And she ran out on the terrace and ran into their apartment. Said she was afraid to come home. Said she didn't want to go home. She doesn't have to come home.
Did the neighbor have a door on the same terrace, or the neighbor?
Yes, we shared the top terrace. We were in the front overlooking Riverside Drive. They were in the back.
Oh, I see. When she said she was afraid to come home, did you feel like that was something that she was saying to the neighbor as a kind of a way of making things public or trying to pressure you, or did you feel like she was really afraid to come home?
I have no idea. I didn't really care one way or the other. What she did was late and I was just tired.
You remember what the fight was about?
No.
Were there subjects that became, the typical subjects you would fight about?
Well, like where we were going or where we weren't going or whether we were going to go to South Salem for the weekend or not, like that. And she got into this money thing, and her lawyer, as soon as he got documents from me, told her more or less what was told here, except she was entitled to a big chunk of my individual money, which would have been very, very substantial compared to, what the McCormack family had, and she was going to be a doctor forever. So I never could appreciate what the big deal about money was. And yes, I canceled her credit card and took her off the bank account, but she had her own bank account, and I didn't want her on mine, or I guess I was told that she shouldn't be on your credit card. She could get her own credit cards.
But you were still cohabitating, essentially.
Most of the time, yes. Last year at medical school, they do something called the sub-intern, which is what it sounds like. They spend oodles of hours in the hospital. And always goes overnight.
I think that was that woman was our idea of Flo Jones, your assistant.
For a little while. she tried to do something not that dissimilar to what Kathy is shown doing it here. She was going to get something on me, so I would have to give her something meaningful, and I fired her.
The assistant you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was she successful, and did she come up with some brilliant idea?
No, she came up with her own ideas. She was never a real smart lady, and her ideas were stupid.
Did Kathy feel like there was, you know, that she was going to be able to make a, you know, an argument that somehow she had something on you, and that was going to really motivate you? I never got the feeling that was that there was a successful strategy there.
No, I mean, there was no successful strategy, but by then, I mean, she never filed for divorce. She didn't want a divorce. She wanted to have a child or children, and she wanted me to not always be the dominant one, not make all the decisions. I would show up for a meeting with 15 guys, 2 hours late, stoned, wearing a t-shirt and a jock or whatever, and let everybody know that the way to waste a life is to sit around a big table and talk about gibberish documents all day long. And I was there infrequently. I'd never go in the morning. An early, arrival for me would be after lunch. And this made me feel bad about the movie, Andrew. I mean, the thought idea that I could kill Igor, I don't like.
Well, there was a lot of discussion about you having had a lot of dogs over the years. A bunch of whom were named Igor, but maybe someone said to us at one point that you had 7 dogs in 10 years or something.
No. We had 2 Igors before the Igor that lasted forever. One of them got run over, and one of them, when he was a puppy, went out, and the second one ate an apple core. The apple core got stuck in his gut. We took him and had an operation done on him, and he died.
So I guess that at some point Susan Berman sort of, when things started to heat up, kind of became your spokesperson or talked to some members of the press or something like that.
I went to the police and immediately got out to the newspapers. I answered the first couple of calls and then asked Susan if she would handle it, which Susan was capable of it and prepared for and did.
But you were in Galveston, you talked about it, so it wasn't something that you tried to...
I didn't tell anybody my name was Robert Durst.
Right.
I didn't use my checks, my credit cards, my telephone, any of that.
So this is a moment of that's been discussed a lot, or at least when you came back to your apartment, and I think found Morris in your apartment. Do you remember that event?
I remember it very, very, very clearly.
Yeah.
And I remember the nightmare I went through over the next several days, trying to decide what to do, deciding I could not go to the police. The police aren't going to believe this. Nobody's going to believe that I came down here to Galveston, a rich guy, rented a $300 a month apartment disguised as a woman. And by the way, my neighbor is lying in my kitchen with a shot in the face from my gun.
There was a lot of discussion about the head.
Yeah, they never found the head. I have no idea why. I do know that there must have been 15 garbage bags full of body parts and other stuff with blood on it or whatever, and they found 12. Now, why they didn't find the other ones, since they were all dumped in the same place, I have no idea.
But the head was with everything else.
Oh, it was in a garbage bin. It was in one of the garbage bags.
Did you feel there was a good chance? Well, clearly, you must have felt there was a good chance of you being convicted.
And the newspapers all said it was an unwinnable case for me, an unlosable case for the DA.
Do you think that I mean, that's my impression, and listening to some of the jurors talk about it, was that was part of the problem, was that the DA was so confident going in that once you have a defendant who's admitted to dismembering the body, that it's not very difficult to get a jury to believe that the murder was intentional.
What else would it be? I mean, how do you dismember somebody's body unless you kill them first? I mean, it was straightforward logic, but it just doesn't work that way. First, in self-defense, Texas, Alaska, Idaho, a couple of other states make it so that you kill somebody in your house, on your property, it's much easier to make a claim of self-defense than except in those few states. Dick DeGuerin and Mike Ramsey were able to explain this to me, that it wasn't unwinnable. It was tough, but not unwinnable. The DA kept acting like he was going to convict me of dismembering a body, which he wasn't. He was trying to convict me of murder. He must have said about 20 times to the jury, did anything Robert Durst do after Morris Black was dead could have affected the manner in which he died? Can you unring a bell? No. Can you unstrike a match? No. What happened after Morris Black was dead is irrelevant to the murder charge. But the DA insisted on convicting me of dismembering a body, which I was never charged with, and which is a misdemeanor in the state of Texas.
One of the things that has come to me is our commentary. I really can't tell you how much I appreciate your sitting here and going through parts of your life with me.
I enjoy doing it.
Beginning on December 11th, 2010, following the recording of the DVD commentary, Durst sat for 3 days of filmed interviews with Jarecki and Smerling at the Lowe's Hotel in Santa Monica. For the purposes of continuity, Durst wore the same outfit on December 11th, 12th, and 13th. The portions of Durst's December 11th through 13th, 2010 interviews that the people have played and or will play in court during this trial are true and accurate portions of those interviews. No portions of these interviews, either the videos or audios, were edited, altered, or modified in any way. This includes statements Durst made while watching All Good Things for the purpose of making a DVD commentary. However, in the course of putting together what would eventually become the Jinx, Jarecki, Smerling, and or their associates at Hit the Ground Running and Magnolia Productions did in fact make edits and modifications of this audio and video footage. The edits that were made were consistent and in line with industry standards in the documentary film community. Portions of the unedited December 11th through 13th interviews are admitted into evidence as Exhibit 269 and 269A and will now be played. We're going to hand out the transcript now. Did we? We got that? All right. I was looking down. Sorry.
Is everyone good?
Yes, I did.
And I was curious, I spent the last 4 years making a movie about you, and so it was fascinating to talk to you for the first time when you called me. I thought it was interesting. I guess you originally called the distributor of the movie Magnolia Pictures, and I think that they thought you were kidding, or they thought it
Oh,
was
he
me.
was sure I was not Robert Durst. Who was this?
That's funny. Well, I think they were surprised to hear from you. I was very happy to hear from you because that we had reached out early on when we first started making the movie to try to talk to you to get your perspective on the film that we were going to make.
I found that out much, much, much later from the newspaper, but my lawyer decided to keep it to himself. He knows best, he figured. Well, I started learning that you were doing all of this research, and that is certainly the case with all of those other Bobby Durst experts. You know more about Bobby or Bob or Robert Durst than any of those people do. I mean, you really did research it, and I thought I appreciated that a lot.
When we talked, you and I spoke a little bit about the DVD for the film and the fact that that created more of an opportunity to talk about the subject matter, talk about your life. And then at one point, I suggested to you that rather than, just doing something on the DVD, we actually sit down and do this interview and really talk through your life and your history in a more elaborate way. What appealed to you about that, and why did you decide to do
Oh, because you had really done the research on me. The screenplay was not a hatchet job, and I had always planned on someday, the someday was always way out there, but someday giving interviews about what happened as opposed to what people think or believe or something like that happened. I was immediately attracted to the idea of having you do the interview. I felt strongly that the interview would not be a hatchet job, because you didn't do a hatchet job in the movie.
But, that day we talked a bunch and then arranged for you to see the movie for the first time.
That was the clincher, and I knew I wanted to do this with you.
And how did you feel when you sat down to see the movie? Did you have trepidation about it? And how did you feel when you were watching it?
Oh, enormous trepidation, but I felt the movie was very, very, very close in much of the ways about what pretty much happened. Kathy was gone. I didn't know where. I knew something was wrong because she was supposed to graduate from medical school. And at first, she just wasn't answering her calls. But she was doing what they call a sub-intern in the hospital, which involves staying over a lot of nights. And I wasn't worried at first. It wasn't until I got a call from the hospital, from the medical school, that she hadn't been in classes for several days. And I got to do something.
That's interesting. Another big decision, I don't know whether it was a decision all at once or whether it happened in little bites, but Judge Chris allowed Dick DeGuerin to take you through your life story.
At great length. That was the judge. That was what I was saying, is the judge gave us an opportunity to level the playing field.
And when you were there, you first met another good friend of yours who you knew for most of your life. Was that?
Is it Susan Berman?
Yeah, tell me about that.
So that was the first year I was there. I invited friends of mine out from back here, Stuart Alton and his brother, and the place where everybody would go. We were staying in the Beta House right near UCLA, and they had a program where they rented out rooms to anybody over the summer. And the place that people would go was the Dykstra Dormitory, when the first dormitory at UCLA built up on the hill across from the campus, and that had a great pool. And they also had great buffet lunches that you paid 20 cents for or whatever. But so Dykstra has this big pool. Everybody goes to the big pool in the afternoon. And if you're a boy, you're trying to meet a girl. If you're a girl, you're trying to meet a boy. And I saw this girl who looked very, very pretty, wearing a white outfit and a white cap and black hair, and I went over and started talking to her. And we went swimming, and that was Susan Berman, and we stayed friends until she died in 2000.
And when you were at UCLA, she became your best friend?
Yeah, I spent all my time with her. She dated my friend from New York a little bit, not very long.
And was it a platonic relationship?
Strictly platonic. We would have sleepover dates, but it was strictly platonic. She came a couple of nights and stayed in our room in the Beta House. Now this is a big room in the Beta House, but there's Stuart Altman, his brother, me, and Susan.
And was she ever, do you think, interested in you as a boyfriend, or for her it was also platonic?
I don't think she was ever interested in me as a boyfriend. But we would spend a lot of time together. We could talk. We had the thing in common. Both of her parents died when she was young. And I had one parent die when I was young. She was raised by various sleepaway school, high school, prep schools, private high school. She was raised by them. I was raised by governesses. Neither of us got a chance to meet our parents hardly at all. But we would spend a lot of time together. We could talk. We had the thing in common. Both of her parents died when she was young. I had one parent die when I was young. She was raised by various sleepaway school, high school, prep schools, private high school. She was raised by them. I was raised by governesses. Neither of us got a chance to meet our parents hardly at all. And she was taking control of the marriage by threatening to divorce me. And I figured, you know, if we just drop the lawyers, maybe I'll be here in 6 months again with the same thing, because I hadn't changed. I was still the same controlling person. I wasn't about to have her telling me what to do. She had gotten there to a large extent.
When you say you were controlling in your relationship with her, give me an example of what.
Oh, I would choose a restaurant. When we got to the restaurant, I would look at the menu and say, well, I'm thinking of this or that. What are you thinking of? And then, well, why don't you get this, the such and such, and I'll get the other, and then we can trade a little bit. And, she went along with that for a while, and then she just got tired of it. You have what you want, I'm going to have what I want, the end. And I want you to leave my food alone. And a lot of times with me canceling things all the time, we'd be planning on going out to dinner Friday night, and now it's Friday morning and I don't want to go. Anyway, so in the morning I'm in the shower, I'll frequently find myself talking to myself about somebody or other, or some experience I just had, or something I was planning on doing that evening. And I said, I just keep going back to the same stuff again and again.
And the being nice to her friends or her family, give me an example.
No, it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I just treated them nastier and nastier and nastier.
And why do you know that now, but you didn't know that then?
I knew I was being nasty to her parents and her family and her friends. I just didn't realize that, what are you doing, you asshole? This is terrible. These are nice people. These are good people. you're treating them like dog garbage, and they treat you with 100% respect, and all you do is act nasty to them. I think I said I feed the dog from the dinner table at their house. I would talk about making love to Kathy at the dinner table in front of the kids and her mother. I mean, everything possible so that I'm just thinking about it now, so that maybe Kathy would say, well, you don't have to go anymore.
Interesting. And the talking about lovemaking, for example, I mean, tell me how that played in that audience and what kinds of
They
things you might
ignored
say.
it. They ignored the fact that that was there. Rather than getting angry, they ignored it.
Do you remember what you said?
Well, one night I was talking about my penis and getting hard when Kathy first came out of the bathroom, like that.
So you knew probably that Anne, Kathy's mother, would not appreciate that.
Oh, hated it, hated it. And Kathy hated that I was nasty to her, and Kathy hated that as time went on, Anne McCormack didn't hesitate to tell people Bob doesn't like me.
Did you ever speak to her? Did you ever talk to the mother and have a real conversation?
No.
Did you think of her as being sort of pedestrian or boring or?
Boring, pedestrian, this lady who wanted to talk about all the stuff that I did not want to talk about. Not a sophisticated person. I'm not saying she's a stupid person, but she really, and she would ask questions like, what's the most important thing to you, Bob? Bob, the only important thing in life is to enjoy it. You should enjoy it all the time. There's nothing else there. Getting into these questions like that, that's the last thing I was going to discuss with her, or with anybody, really.
So she wanted to engage you, though.
Oh, yes.
Say if you can do it like a full sentence, Kathy's mother.
Oh, Kathy's mother was very interested in Bob Durst, this rich, well-known, famous real estate developer's family, in Bob Durst liking me, and Bob Durst conversing with me. I remember maybe the second or third time when Kathy brought me there, not long after we met, she tells me that you can call me Mom if you feel like that. Everybody, this is before we're married, everybody calls me Mom. And what do you call your mother? I said, my mother died when I was 7. Just total, that's why I would say to people, just totally flat. The end of conversation. She would try to talk to me about other things. The house we bought in South Salem didn't have a basement. She wanted to explain to us why it's very important to have a basement. And I wasn't going to talk about it. Her favorite reading material was the magazine Yankee, the New England thing. And she would want to talk to me about the articles in Yankee. And I'm not interested in talking about canning.
So these experiences with her family were kind of like Bob meets the average American family.
Well, more than meet, Bob is forced to spend time with the average American family. Bob is supposed to be polite and cooperative and pleasant and engage in the same conversations that they are. And I just couldn't do that. I just kept feeling like I could show them that I despise these things that they do.
And
Ridicule these things that they do.
do you remember ridiculing in front of them?
Well, talking about my penis in front of Kathy's mother, About as extreme as I could imagine. Kathy's brother Jim felt strongly that if I was not getting along with him, there had to be something wrong with him. Here I'm from this wealthy family, very successful. If I'm impolite to him, well, it must be because he's doing things which cause me to be impolite to Jim. It's not that Bob should change, but that Jim should change. Well, Kathy and I had, before we'd gone to his family, I had insisted that we pick a period of time after which he'll leave. I think it was 2 hours, maybe it was 3 hours. And now the 2 hours or 3 hours is gone, and Kathy wants to stay a little while longer, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I went outside and I said, all right, you stay. I'm going to take Igor out and go for a walk. We always bring Igor to their house and go for a walk. I'll be in the car. You got 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever it was. The time went up and I went back inside and grabbed her and pulled her out.
And when you went back inside, let's say when you were sitting in the car or in between, did you feel you were getting angry that you were being left out there? Did you feel that she was...
No, I was getting angry that she had not done what we agreed to do, which was leave. It was very similar to with children. We had talked about having children, and all of a sudden she's pregnant and wants the child. And I thought, this is not what we agreed. Not what we agreed. Yeah, Ann's birthday was on Christmas Day, and I would frequently go and be nasty to Ann. We would always go there for Christmas. That was something Kathy always wanted to do. I would always agree. I would have qualifications. Yeah, we would go there for Christmas dinner. We would leave after a certain time. And several times as we're going back in the car, she's crying and saying, it's her birthday and it's Christmas. Why can't you just be nice to her now? All she ever talks about with you is how much you don't like her. She never says, I don't like Bob. It's always, Bob doesn't like me. The whole onus, just the more I think about it, was that the McCormack family felt that if I was treating them badly, they must be doing something bad. I went inside and grabbed Kathy. Time to go, let's go.
And we talked about the various stories about that. Tell me what you remember about going back in there. And
I remember grabbing her by her hair and grabbing her arm and getting her coat. We're going.
And the grabbing her by her hair part, how did that enter your mind or
No, I went back in to get Kathy. Kathy, it's time to go. Well, just another, no, we're going.
And from your standpoint, was it that you were pissed off, you were angry?
Yes, I was pissed off. She agreed to leave after a certain period of time, and now she's not doing it. She's wrong. I'm right. Let's go.
And you described that there were a couple of theories about whether you pulled her by her hair, whether a chunk.
Whether I pulled a chunk of her hair out, and I remember grabbing her by the coat and her arm and the hair. Whether her hair came out or not, I don't know, but I dragged her out of the house.
Do you remember the feeling of that happening as we're sitting here? Do you remember the feeling of walking into the house, going to get her? Is that...
It's total anger. We're not doing this. It was me being the dominant one. If we agree on 2 hours, it's going to be 2 hours. Not going to be 2.5 hours or 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's time to go. You agreed to go. Let's go. The same thing with having a child. You agreed that we weren't going to have children. You got yourself pregnant. You want to get an abortion. You can get an abortion. You want to have the child, you're going to get divorced.
Do you remember the feeling of how the other people in the room reacted when you pulled her
I
out?
left. They didn't act, I don't remember reacting at all. I'm grabbing Kathy, we're going out the storm door and the regular door, or vice versa. We're going out and we're leaving, period. We're outside, I shut the door.
You don't remember there being any reaction?
No, not while I was there. I would imagine they had a reaction after I left. But nobody said anything, nobody did anything, or if they did, I don't know.
And a few minutes ago, you were saying that you were even kind of surprised that Jim didn't do anything. Tell me about
Looking
that.
back on it, I'm kind of surprised, yes.
That
Or one of his brothers-in-law. I mean, they're all there. All of his he had, what was it, one? Yeah, he had 4 sisters. All of the older ones had husbands. There was a whole bunch of brother-in-laws and Jim, the brother. And looking back, I'm surprised that one of them did not do anything. All big guys.
what would they have done, or what should they have done?
Well, they could have stopped him from pulling her out of the house.
How do you think you would have reacted to that if they had done that?
Boy, I have no idea. I wasn't about to get in a fight. I think that if they had stopped me from doing that and Kathy had said, I don't want to leave now like that, I would have gone out and gotten into the car and left. If you want to stay, you can stay, but you're going to get home, some other way. And I had those conversations with him. You agree to, we agree we're going to your family's house for whatever, but you don't want to leave when the time is up, I'm going to leave. You get one of them to take you home, or take the train, or whatever.
Did you feel, we've talked about her sort of at a certain point learning how to press your buttons or knowing how to press your buttons. Did you feel like there was an aspect of that when eventually, when it was enough times of you being there and looking at your watch and saying, let's go, and then it happened repeatedly over time, did you feel like she knew what was going to happen? That she was sort of pressing her luck with you intentionally?
She was always hoping, and we're driving there. All you have to be is polite, nice to everybody. That's all you have to do. It's only going to be whatever it was, 2 hours. Just please be nice. You want to go downstairs and watch television, you can go and do that. Do whatever you want, just don't be nasty. And we would end up frequently in the car going back with her crying about how, particularly on Christmas, it's Christmas Day, it's her birthday. I remember when she turned 65. It's Christmas Day, it's her birthday, she's 65. She's not a nasty lady, she's a nice lady. You can just put up with it for 2 hours.
Did you say, I'll try?
And I wouldn't talk about it. You wanted to come here, not me. Oh, Kathy first started changing from the Kathy I met when I made her get an abortion. This was about, what, 3, 4 years later.
In a way of medicating herself or
You know, all of that. I mean, I do believe that until after she had the abortion, that she didn't start thinking or getting it in her mind totally, I, Kathy Durst, am never having children, period.
she still had that hope that that would happen at some point?
Well, sure, until I made her get the abortion. I mean, everybody has children. Bob will change his mind. And we were happy together.
So, and I remember Jim saying to me at some point that, you would burp in public.
Oh,
think about it.
yes.
Tell me about that.
I would burp in public. I got used to it in college. And I just kept burping in public. And I'm amazed that my father never said, Bob, he couldn't say to me, you can't come in If you're gonna keep coming into the, it's terrible, it's embarrassing. Burping loudly, belching, he said. You don't burp, you belch. Maybe that was my sister who first came up with that. He belches. And I kind of liked it in the business because it made it very clear to everybody that I wasn't going to follow the simplest of the rules. Forget about taking things seriously.
And was it, I mean, did you enjoy the idea that you'd be in a meeting and would disrupt
Yes,
it?
I did enjoy it.
Tell me in a full sentence.
Well, I would be in a meeting and I would be trying to impress upon everybody, and I thought it was a complete waste of time and silly, and I would let out a big belch. No apology, no I'm sorry, no nothing, just, keep going.
But you knew you were doing it.
Yeah, sure.
Was there anything that happened that made you aware of that? Oh, right, I gotta tone this down.
No, I, became aware, when I was in the business, there was nothing they could do if I did it, because what are they gonna do, to fire me? Which would have been all right with me. But when I left the company and I was out doing stuff, I right away realized, you're not Robert Durst organization anymore. You're gonna have to tone these things down, and I stopped belching. And I kept talking to myself, that went on. But I made the belching go away, and I wouldn't be totally impolite to people. I would swear in the meeting, I would use bad words, and enjoy it when I saw a reaction.
Did your dad ever put his foot down? Did he ever say, okay?
No, yes, he put his foot down. Stop doing that. You can't keep doing that. He would take me aside and was like, you can't keep doing that. Just stop the belching, stop talking to these people like they're the maid. You can't do that. I talk to the maids much better than I spoke to the businessy people. But the next step was to say, you can't come in anymore. You're fired. That's just what he did not want, but he wanted me to change and to keep working there.
So it was in some ways a means of protest.
Rebellion.
But
I can do what I want, there's nothing anybody can do about it. Tough. Oh, I was arrested in Galveston. I spent one night in prison in Galveston. And I had been told by the detective that you've been charged with murder, bail has been set at $250,000. And I didn't think that when you were charged with murder, I mean, I didn't know nothing, but you can't give someone charged with murder or bail because they're going to run away, of course. Went through my mind. And I said, it's $250,000? And he says, yes, it's $250,000 cash. So I said, how do I go about doing this? He looks at me and said, do you have $250,000? I said, well, not on me.
But was your intention when you put up the $250,000 to run away?
Oh, goodbye $250,000, goodbye jail, I'm out.
Did you think to yourself at that point, well, sometimes these things, they don't, it's not like a quid pro quo. If you give them the $250,000, you forego the jail time. Sometimes you have to do both.
This is bail. You bail yourself out, you're out.
But you have to come back at some time.
Yes, you sign a bunch of papers about coming back on a certain time. I didn't care what I signed, I wanted to get out. Forget the $250,000.
Did you, when you signed the papers and things, were you thinking to yourself, I'm going to leave and I'm not going to come back unless there's a...
Yes, show me where to sign. Where do I sign?
But your intention at that point was simply to get lost, to go away. It wasn't...
No way. I'm not going to stay here and face murder charges and an unwinnable murder case especially they got me on my neighbor being shot in the face with my gun in my apartment, which I rented, disguised as a woman, and I dismembered the guy's corpse. who's going to acquit me? I'm obviously guilty in front of the eyes of the world. I'm guilty. I ain't coming back here. I'm never going to see this place again. It's not easy to disguise yourself. I'm a guy. And what is a guy going to do? I mean, I could grow a beard and a mustache, and I periodically worn a beard and a mustache in New York City, but I can't grow a beard and a mustache now. I can't do it by tomorrow morning. I would have to get some kind of a thing to put on my face, and I just couldn't imagine that any of that would act vaguely real. I just came up with the idea of a wig. I was cheap. I don't know where I got it from. Seymour was cheap with himself. He was spending a fortune buying tenement, but he was cheap with himself and his lifestyle. And I must have inherited that from him. My little brother Tommy was like that to some extent. Not as extremely as me, but to some extent. Douglas and Wendy were the other way. You know, we got all this money, let's spend it. Oh, yes. When I was in college, I went into Vista for a year after college, and we would help people get food stamps and like that. You know, if they can get them, why can't I get them? All you have to do is show them a bank account with zilch in it and sign a bunch of papers saying you don't got nothing. And I would get food stamps. And I got a big kick out of using food stamps.
Which part did you get a kick out of it? Going into a store?
Yeah, I'm getting away with this. I'm beating the government. I would give Kathy a small budget. This is what you got for the week or month or whatever it is. If you want to spend more, don't talk to me about it.
But did she have any other source of income?
No.
So whatever you gave her that was the
That
limit.
was it. Right. We're getting an abortion, we're getting an abortion. This is how much money you've got to spend this week or month, period.
But someone said that you used to call the office collect.
Oh, all the time.
Tell me about that.
I would call the office collect.
Why did you do that?
I didn't want to pay for it. Let Seymour pay for it. The only reason I'm calling is because he wants me to call.
So let's talk about what you were doing when you met Kathy. Were you living in Vermont? Were you living in the city? How did you
When I
do it?
met Kathy, I was still living, it was still 1970. I come home from UCLA, staying in Katona, trying to decide what I was going to do. Came up with a health food store idea. I was living in Katona in Westchester. And I told her of the idea. I guess we drove up there. And I showed her where I thought I was looking to lease the store, and she loved Middlebury, thought it was just beautiful. She loved the idea. And I guess at some point around that, I said, I'd like you to live with me. I'd like you to move to Middlebury, Vermont, which would mean she'd stop being whatever she was. She had a job, a dental hygienist. I guess she'd gone to Adelphi for a year or so and dropped out. But it meant that she was going to, change her life and come see me. And Jimmy came up and visited me twice. And I was nice to him way back then. I wasn't treating him badly like I gradually started doing.
Where did you first meet her?
I first met Kathy at a party that my friend Stuart Altman took her to.
And then how did it come to pass that she ended up living in the Durst building?
Well, she was already, Stuart must have knew somebody else in the family. I don't remember who. And Stuart met Kathy and her friend, whatever her friend's name was. They had both just gotten jobs as dental hygienists and needed a place to stay. Stewart said, well, I know this guy, his family owns a whole bunch of buildings, and Stewart called somebody. Actually, it wasn't one of the Dursts, it was one of the people who worked there Stewart had met. He called them up and said, I have two nice chick ladies, and they're looking for an apartment. Kathy was given a phone number to call, or her roommate was, and they called whoever was leasing the tenements, and Kathy rented an apartment.
And when you first met her, I guess, at the party, what was your first reaction to her?
Pretty.
Was she your type? Had you had a type? Did you have?
No, I never had a type. We spoke for a good while, nice conversationalists. Planned on going out, in several days, and did that.
So you were older than she was at that time.
9 years.
And was there any stigma attached to that at the time, or was that fairly common?
9 years is a long time.
Age difference, huh?
Yes, 9 years is an old time. I had oodles of education. She had zilch. Girl from a small town without, no big deal. I mean, for me, I guess you would say I was marrying beneath me or something like that, or she was marrying up or well or something like that. But I never got there. I mean, money didn't mean anything to me. It didn't make any difference to me where she was from.
And I think that she, at one point, I heard something about that you would ask Kathy to go to the social services office and pick up more food stamps, and she was very upset about that because she thought that was not right, or...
Yeah, I remember the food stamps thing. She thought we shouldn't be doing it.
And tell me, what do you remember about that? Or if there's
She didn't think we should be using food stamps when there's so little money available for the low-income programs. We don't need food stamps. Why are you doing it? And I think she felt embarrassed the supermarket with our food stamps.
And did you feel like you were just being, difficult by pushing her, saying, well, we're going to do food stamps, or?
I think that she was free, and I said, go pick up the food stamps. Otherwise, I would go pick up the food stamps. She didn't like using the food stamps.
And Tom said that he noted, he didn't know about the food stamps before, but there was an altercation of some kind. You said, well, I want you to go get the food stamps. And
she said to me, to Tommy?
That Tom watched you have an argument with Kathy about sending Kathy to go to the social service office and get food stamps. And she said, I don't want to do it, don't make me do it. And you said, go get the food stamps. And he thought that that was mean, that she was crying and she asked not to do it, and you insisted that she
I remember her being upset about going to the supermarket and paying with the food stamps. But you only had to go to the social service office like once every 6 months, or something like that.
Wow.
I remember coming back from someplace or other. I don't know what the argument was about. Oh, I know what the argument was about. We were on the thruway, and all you can get to eat on the thruway are these places that they have where you pull off the road and you can get gas and like that. And I said, we're going to be home in an hour and a half. Why don't we just wait till there? Why do you want to get food from here? He said, well, I'll make it real quick. So it wasn't real quick. She finally got back into the car. I said, you're supposed to make it real quick. We just wasted half an hour sitting here. And she didn't agree with me, and I thought it was soda in her face.
Was it a lot of soda?
It was a big gulp of soda, big, whatever you want to call it, glass of soda, plastic, of course.
And what was, do you think it had to do with sitting in the car and that feeling?
Yeah. It was an hour and a half from home. You want to, get one of these lousy hamburgers and soggy French fries here, you just wait a little while, we'll be home. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time waiting here. She was, excuse me, running in. And she went in and came out half an hour later, and I said, this is supposed to be quick. And she said, well, they're just closing it, and I had to get them to turn the grill back on. Something like that, ridiculous.
And when you did it, when you threw the liquid on her or whatever, did you throw the cup at her or did you throw the
No,
liquid?
I threw the liquid.
And so she was wet?
She was wet. It
And
was
she-
cold.
Right. And you drove home like that?
She drove home like that.
And after it happened, did you have, when you had these incidents periodically, did you have, did you feel bad a minute later, or did you feel like justified? Did you feel
Absolutely justified. We just wasted all this time to get this yucky stuff.
And how do you remember her letting you know that she was pregnant? How did you find out?
She called me. She'd thrown up a couple of mornings, and she said she was going to see the doctor, and she called me during the day and said, I'm pregnant, and I want to keep this baby. And I said, I'm coming home. And I left the office and went back there, and we had a confrontation. I said, I told you from the beginning I didn't want children. No secrets. You agreed that we wouldn't have children. Now you're telling me you're pregnant, which, you're in charge of that stuff, not me. And you want to keep the baby. Well, keep the baby, you're going to get divorced from me. Period.
Would you have been jealous if you knew that she was having an affair?
I'm sure I would have.
So was it you were proudly the bearer of the double standard that we all?
Absolutely. It didn't bother me at all. I honestly might have voiced it like that or thought it through like that, but the way I felt was I feel like having sex with somebody else, it's all right, but boy, you better not.
When you first got together with her and she was 19 and you were 28 or something like that.
There was no question about it. She was just leaving everything to me.
And was that very appealing to you because you didn't have to deal with the issues of
She was
control?
very pretty. I loved being with her, and I was making all the decisions, calling all the shots, as she would say.
Do you always want that situation, or sometimes?
No, and she started, having her friends say, you're both married. You shouldn't just be Bob deciding where you're going to go to dinner. I remember we were going to dinner with Wendy and her husband. And I had said, well, let's go to whatever, and I'll tell Wendy and Dougie. And she said, well, listen, I don't know if I want to go to such and such. I said, why not? And then that was the why don't you want to go to such? Well, it took her a while to get to the point of, Bob, I'd like to sometimes choose the restaurant.
Well, it sounds like she was naturally getting more independence. Because once she knew she wasn't going to have a baby with you, it sounds like she was starting to feel her oats a little bit, to feel like she had to get out there and make some decisions for herself.
It took a while, but yes. When she wasn't having a baby with me, when she was married to me, and she started confronting, well, I want to be with Bob, but I also want to have a baby. And it took her a while to get to the point of, what replaced the baby to a large extent was when she decided she wanted to go to medical school. And this became an all-consuming thing.
Now, in April of 1979, which was, a little more than half a year after she started at medical school, she said the two of you went to a party and that you were both drunk and you came home, and that was the first time that she remembers that you had hit her. you had an argument and that you slapped her or something like that. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember the first time I had slapped her or hit her.
Do you remember other times that?
Oh, yeah, by 1981, our life was half arguments, fighting, slapping, pushing, wrestling.
She talks then a little later in '79, she says that you argued over something minor and that was the time that you remember you hit her harder, that you had actually, she felt you had punched her as opposed to just slapping her. Do you remember that
No, I
escalating?
don't remember what she would have been referring to. There were lots of fights, if you will.
In your recollection, other than the pulling of the hair or something, was there a time when you remember hitting her pretty hard or having a big wrestling match
No, I
where
don't
things...
remember her hitting her pretty hard. I would wrestle and push and shove, go into the bedroom and take a pill and go to sleep, or leave wherever it was she was at.
And tell me about the wrestling or pushing and shoving, like how did that...
Everything got to be an antagonistic thing. No matter what it was, we were pushing, shoving in restaurants and be asked to leave.
Describe that for me a little more, so I understand if I were in the restaurant.
We're having an argument, it's getting louder, and I grab hold of something. I remember one time I grabbed the tablecloth. I mean, she said she wasn't finished yet, and I pulled her plate, etc., over here, and you're finished, and I threw the tablecloth on top of it, and we ended up pushing and shoving, and they said, get out.
And do you remember her, I mean, obviously she's a girl, she's 115 pounds, that must have resulted in her periodically being injured in some way.
Oh, she made a fuss about being injured. The scene where she goes out the window onto the balcony, scrapes her leg and goes to the neighbors. And she could have walked out the door, tells the neighbors that she's scared to go home. And I told the neighbors she doesn't want to come home. Stay here with you if she wants, if you want.
In that particular, incident, I mean, did she...
She never called the police, just went to see the neighbor.
And what was the logic behind the Polaroids?
Just that I wanted this lady who I wanted to do not to know I was married. And the hair pulling wasn't even the worst. There were numerous, I don't know, numerous, a whole bunch of other times I would grab her and say, we're leaving.
When we were talking about the terrace incident, or her climbing out onto the terrace during the, you said that they came over and they said, well, she's afraid to come home, or the neighbor...
Yeah, she's afraid to come home.
And your reaction to that was to say, well, she doesn't want to come home, she doesn't have to
She
come
doesn't have to
home.
come home. She's got the other apartment over on 86th Street. She wants me to get out of here so she can get some stuff together. Whatever she wants to do, she can do. I don't care.
And when you said you didn't care, what did that mean? You didn't care?
It's late
or-
at night, I'm tired, I want to go to sleep. She can do whatever she wants to do.
Was that a big fight compared to other incidents
That was a
between you?
mini fight. The fact that she climbed out the window made it a big fight, but that wasn't a big thing. It didn't go on long. All of a sudden she's climbing out the window. I was already, getting ready to go to bed.
Your Honor, this is probably a good point for us to take a pause for a break. If we take a 10-minute break, we should get through this, this section of the video, just this video, by the end of the day.
You okay with is 10 minutes okay?
Okay.
Is that all right? Good? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will take a 10-minute break. Do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. 3:10 p.m. We'll return.
Very briefly, Your Honor, I want contemporaneously with the introduction of this to make sure the record is clear that We have objected to this material from the outset, but the court has overruled us on the admissibility. But also, as far as the stipulation is concerned, it was a strategic decision to take what we thought was the lesser of two evils, rather than have Mr. Jarecki here and for other reasons to do this by stipulation.
You're right. I did overrule objections to this material, so that's fine. It makes sense. It's a tactical choice. Yes, Mr. Lewin?
You know, we just want to add that obviously, given it's the people's position, that given the evidence that we had, the defense's decision to enter into the stipulations, especially when they were done, led to the result that we did not have witnesses coming in here emphasizing their testimony, et cetera.
This is consistent with what Mr. DeGuerin just said.
Correct. So
Thank
the
you.
people agree.
It's one of our rare areas of agreement.
Thank you, Mr. DeGuerin. Okay,
And we
let's
move-
have a real break, 10 minutes for,
And we move for mistrial.
and you move for a mistrial?
Yes, sir.
Based on,
Based on the introduction test.
to which you stipulated.
No, but previously had objected to, for the very reasons that he's asking for the mistrial, because we just heard gratuitous testimony that has nothing to do with Susan Berman's death, about abortion and domestic violence.
Ah, all right. That is, I don't need to hear from the people for motions tonight. Okay, thank you.